With me right now, former Reagan budget director David Stockman is author of a new book called Trumped. And he kind of plays the same thing that we're all trumped here, not in a good or bad way, if we're ignoring some of these building deficits and piling on debt. Did any of the candidates last night address your concerns?
Well, I think Governor Pence did a superb job. I mean, really, he was presidential, he was eloquent, he was compelling, and he was prepared. And those are words that don't come to mind when you think of Donald Trump and his performance last week.
Did he say anything, Governor Pence, David, that particularly maybe relieved you or soothed you on these issues that you've been targeting for years now?
Yeah, he kept saying, our purpose is to shrink government. Our purpose is to stop the growth of this debt monster. He mentioned it several times, and it's worth noting once again that the national debt was $10.5 trillion when Obama was sworn in. It's $19.6 trillion today. Wow. We have gained $9 trillion, or almost double what the debt was. The debt that was created by the first 43 presidents in the first 2 centuries of our existence as a country. So this is alarming, and yet somehow in the first debate, it hardly came up. And as we've gotten halfway into this election season, we're hearing little about it. Hillary is the candidate of the status quo. There is not a government program that she ever met that she didn't want to keep or expand. And she is pretending that somehow by waving waving their arms, Washington can make economic growth happen.
Well,
and it's not.
Do you buy these scores they give to each candidate's, budget prescriptions? Because they say that Donald Trump's will cost $5 trillion more than hers. I don't know what's true. I don't know what's accurate. We can barely tell how the budget's going to look next month, let alone 10 years out. But what do you make of that, and that they say his tax cuts are so huge that there's no way in heck you pay for them?
Well, I've been critical of the point that he has the wrong tax cuts and he doesn't pay for them. I'll be very honest about that. And Pence didn't get to that part of it last night, but he at least flagged the problem. I have said over and over, the problem now is the tax on payrolls, the tax on labor and workers. We're the highest cost labor country in the world. We got a 15% tax on top of that, half to the worker, half to the employer. We need to get rid of that and replace it with a tax on imports and consumption, which Trump has rightly flagged. But somehow they get all twisted around and pretend we're going to have another supply-side miracle, that the economy is going to...
You think we will?
I think we need to address the supply side, because that's where the problem is. I think taxes are too high. Regulation is horrendous.
Well, the idea that it would create revenue. Now, what happened in the Reagan years is they spent that revenue.
The problem in the Reagan years is we spent it. But beyond that, there is more revenue built into the CBO forecast than even a robust supply-side program will ever generate. So the problem with Trump and his advisors is they're counting it twice. It's already there, and it's not going to happen. And then they do the right thing, cut taxes, and they count it again. But they're not cutting the right taxes, and that's unfortunate, because he has alerted, the American people. He has connected with the Rust Belt that our trade situation is totally out of control. But the way to address it is not by starting a trade war. The way to address it is to reduce the cost and make our labor more competitive.
But bottom line, if you had your druthers, because you have problems with both candidates, you have fewer problems with Trump and Pence.
Of course. I'm a voter in Colorado, and as I say, that's a swing state, that's a battleground state. If it's close, I'm going to vote early and often for Trump, just like they used to say in Chicago.
Right.
But unfortunately, I hope that he doesn't get distracted on foreign policy. One of the reasons people like him is he said, wait a minute, we're doing some failed things and some obsolete things. We don't have to have a big knockdown fight with Putin and Russia. I'll go make a deal. And last night, unfortunately, Pence contradicted all of that. On the substance, Pence was bad. The liberal spinners this morning are saying he threw Trump under the bus because he didn't, defend some of his obnoxious language. I think he threw Trump under the M1 tank on foreign policy by saying we're going to go into Aleppo and we're going to start no-fly zones and picking out who the good guys are and the bad guys.
I got that sense, too, that he was going this on his own. I can't defend some of these remarks, not all of them.
Yeah.
but I'm not going to. I'm going to give you my vision.
Well, the part
it might
that
be Trump's vision.
You know, I would say the part he didn't defend were some of the flamboyant words that Trump has used. They can't be defended, okay? But what he did do was try to defend the program, the direction, the need for changing.
In other words,
after
don't
30
focus
years.
on the messenger. Focus.
Yeah, focus focus on the failed status quo. You know, I was Jimmy Carter in 1980 in the debate rehearsals with Reagan.
Is that right?
Yes, and I spent a whole week, and the two things that came out of it were, one, at the beginning of the week, Reagan knew less than Trump does today, so people can be a little relaxed. But secondly, Reagan was a good student. He knew he was there to get prepared, to
and he could crystallize what he wanted
to say, to get his message honed.
So what does
and
Trump
to
have
stay,
to do?
That's what he ought to do. Two things in the remaining time between now and Sunday. One, watch Pence last night. Sit down and watch it twice, because the man was brilliant as a debater. Number two, he ought to get out the tape of the old Reagan debate, Cleveland, 1980, and watch that 3 times. And if
that was the one and only debate between those two.
And if he did, he would recognize that you get on message, you don't go into extraneous attacks and name-calling, you attack the status quo. Are you better off than you were 4 years ago? Are you better off than you were 8 years ago now? That's what he needs to hit, and that's what the country is responding to.
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Keep it clear, keep it simple.
Right.
David Stockman, best-selling author, budget director, all those many years ago for Ronald Reagan.